So 5 years in prison, and that's what the former president of Korea got, as he faces several charges. Basically, he tried to call the military on his own people. And I want to go over this because there's a lot of things that Trump and the Americans can learn from what's going on here in Korea, as essentially a functioning democracy is people like Trump's a wannabe dictator's worst nightmare. So let me show you guys what's going on, as many people often ask me about this stuff. Ex-president sentenced to 5 years in prison. First martial law linked ruling. Again, this Yoon dude, he tried to send the military on against his own people, was ultimately arrested and impeached, and people also took to the streets peacefully to remove the dude, which is something that I hope the Americans do shortly. Let me read some details of this stuff. And again, this is one of many charges. The court also found Yoon guilty of abusing his authority to obstruct a lawful investigation. It ruled that he had used the Presidential Security Service to hinder the execution of an arrest warrant by investigators. Listen to a quote here from the judge. During the investigation, he abused the immense influence he has had as president to obstruct the lawful execution of the warrant, and for his own private benefit, effectively turned the Presidential Security Service into his own private guard. Like I said, this sounds very similar to the Trump stuff, right? Yet the defendant continues to offer implausible excuses, as he has shown no sign of reflecting on or repenting for his wrongdoing. So it's very interesting that they're talking about both the crime and also the former president's attitude on this stuff, right? No repentance and your excuses are ridiculous, basically, or implausible is the words that they say. Also see the movie 12 Till the Day. I mentioned in the last video, but check it out if you haven't. If you're curious how the history of Korea is different and why penalties come down like this on presidents who try to pull this crap by sending the military again against your own people. Yoon also tried to pull stuff that Trump is doing. It's basically all very similar. Yoon is just like Trump. He had some of his people tried to start a war with North Korea, basically. I guess they were flying drones over there. And so there's a big investigation in that. And the idea is if we have a war with North Korea, then suddenly you declare martial law and you shut down everything and take over elections, etc. It's the same kind of stuff. Arrest your political opponents. It's the same kind of crap that Trump's trying to pull. And that's why it's important that as a democracy, peacefully protest, remove the dude, get better people. Trump's in our news as well. And it's like, Korea pins hopes on U.S. pledge of, quote, no less favorable chips tariffs. It matters, right? When Trump's disrupting trade relations around the world, then everyone's scrambling, like, what are you saying? Do we take this guy seriously or not? And they have to translate his tweets on a daily basis. It's the funniest crap because, Trump tweets out crazy crap in English. So imagine trying to translate to your local people. But despite all of the crazy crap that Trump's doing, actually, Korean companies are doing really, really well. Look at this. Hyundai Kia post record U.S. market share in 2025 despite Trump tariffs. And again, I just want to show you guys what we're doing. And long story short, put out a good product, people will buy it. The way that Elon Musk or those kind of, frankly, losers talk is like, oh, why don't you buy my car? My car's so awesome. But it's like, you know what? As a consumer, the consumers can decide what's awesome or not awesome. And then Musk will try to play the game of buying up politicians, try to block other companies from entering the markets, etc. But I'm telling you the truth, guys, build a good car, build a good product, people will buy it. And evidently Americans are buying Kia and Hyundais more and more. So it says here, basically, they're sitting at 11.3% market share, which is an increase for them. So it's fourth place. And if you're curious about USA, GM is 17.5% of the market share. So that's first place. Toyota's in second place, 15.5. Ford is 13.3. So this is also interesting. U.S. auto sales went up, I guess, 2.4%. But then Hyundai and Korea sales climbed 7.5%. So they're basically outperforming the market. And they're just taking market share. But it is a competitive industry. And there's lots of industries that are competitive. And to stay competitive, you got to keep refreshing your lineup and to pay attention to what consumers want and put out good products and people will buy it. That's how the game is played. Also going on, I just want to show you guys what's going on here in Korea because, again, people always ask me. They're talking about expanding the EV tax incentives. And essentially, the way it works here is you have national incentives and then you have like local city incentives. So every region's going to be different. I'm in Busan, so our incentives are different than, say, in Seoul. The governments here in Korea are looking to get more people on electric. We have a different situation than, say, other parts of the world, we just don't have as much oil as say USA or, Venezuela or Iran or whatever. And I think it's a good move to try to move away as oil as much as possible and develop other alternative energies. And I personally do like electric cars, but it's not just cars here. They invest very heavily in mass transit, which I think is fantastic. Also, what's going on here in Korea this is actually a really interesting one as well. All this stuff relates to the USA as well. The Avatar movie, right? You guys know it's the American film, and I think Avatar is owned by Disney these days. I think because wasn't Avatar Fox, and then Disney bought Fox. I think that's how that connects. Or yeah, I think that's what the connection is. But anyway, they did pretty well when they first entered the market, but now there's like this local indie romance film that's just crushing it at the box office, and people are going to go see it. And the reason why I mention this is that local Korean goods or cultural products like movie and stuff are doing really well, both locally and abroad. This one's an interesting one because it also represents sort of the things that happen in industry. This is a remake of an old Chinese movie back in 2018 called Us Is Them, and then the Korean remake is called Once We Were Us. I haven't seen it. I'm just saying this is what our news looks like. Or another example, they're always talking about, hey, we got a new partnership with Netflix. Everybody loves it around the world, that kind of stuff. Like there's always new shows out. There's like so many Korean shows these days because people like this kind of stuff, and it's an alternative to what you see out of Hollywood and just different kinds of things. Other things that's going on in Korea, because again, people always ask me about this stuff, and I'm showing you. Cosmetic industry does really, really well. But as I told you guys, say with the cars or anything, put out a good product and people will buy it. And there's always going to be competition. So you got to always stay on your toes to refresh your lineups. The question right now is, will Chinese cosmetic brands then challenge Korean brands? Now, China's kind of similar to USA, to where if they can't compete, they'll just block your products. So that actually is really significant because it matters, right? If the Chinese market suddenly closed to Korean products, even though Chinese consumers really like Korean products, like you can't sell it if it's blocked. So, I believe in free trade. Everyone, hey, I'll buy Korean or Chinese cosmetics or phones or whatever, depending on whatever is the best product. Sometimes Chinese make better cameras. Sometimes Koreans make better phones. Sometimes, depending on the product, sometimes, and it may happen soon, maybe we're all buying Chinese cars in the future if they make better products. At the moment in USA, for example, Japanese cars do really well, German cars, Korean cars, and American cars, of course. But eventually, I think Chinese cars will ultimately come as consumers will realize, man, these things aren't that bad. But ultimately, you decide what's good based on, again, make a good product, people will buy it. Regarding the cosmetic industry, it's kind of interesting. So I'll just give you some numbers. It says China's cosmetic exports totaled $3.99 billion. Okay, so that's increasing by 8.7%. And then Korea's exports, again, this is cosmetics, it says a record $10.3 billion. So I guess the Korean cosmetic industry is over double the size of the Chinese one at this point. And you keep hearing all this stuff about like Koreans, just businesses booming and growing. It's just very different than what you see here in the USA, where Trump is shutting down everything. Or here, you keep hearing about this stuff, like you'll hear various indicators of record tourist numbers. I see it here in Busan. We true story. It was like last night we saw a group. I want to say maybe 7 or 8. It was middle-aged Japanese women were here, and totally fine. They're tourists, And every time I see tourists, I'm just like, that's fantastic. It's more money into the economy. I mean, we just saw it last night, but we see tours all the time. I'm just saying that it was just kind of a noticeable group because it wasn't a tour group. It was just like a group of friends, and they're just out enjoying themselves. This is another example. Temple Stay participation hits record 350,000 visitors last year. The government's been promoting, go stay at a temple. It's awesome. And basically, it's not really religious like for the visitors who go. It's more you go there for meditation, to detox digitally. Yeji and I, my wife and I, we've made videos about this stuff. The last one we talked about specifically to where you can go spend the night. And the idea is you go in a place where no TVs, no radios, you eat healthy food and don't spend all your time just glued to your phone. And it's healthy to detox sometimes digitally, that is. And basically, though, more and more people are going to temples, both domestically and foreign tourists. This is also the kind of stuff that's going on in Korea, and I want to illustrate this stuff because sometimes the way the Trumpers, the Elon Musk, they always talk that they hate regulations and regulations hold people back, blah, blah, blah. But I would want to give you a different perspective that society can improve if you create regulations that like are there in place to help things and sort of how can I say it, make us all get along better and think about each other. So for example, this is a really interesting one. Seoul sets stricter rules for city-sponsored marathons. So how do you regulate a marathon? So one would be when can you start a marathon and when should the marathon end? So basically they're moving up the start time. So it says, this is the new rules. Under the new rules, races requiring traffic control must now begin before 7:30 a.m. So before 7:30, and then you got to finish at 10 a.m. And then the reason is because if you say put it in the middle of the day or the end of the day or whatever, you're going to disrupt too many commuters' lives, which makes sense, right? We're not against marathons. It's just if you're going to do it at a time when kind of makes sense. You don't bother people. And this was also an interesting one. I think this one would be controversial in the USA because people would, like Elon Musk would cry foul. But listen to what it says. I want to hear your opinion on this one. The city also banned alcohol companies from sponsoring events, citing a mismatch between the spirit of athletics and alcoholic branding. And see how that's an interesting one? Because I think in USA they would say, no, you can't do that. That's free speech. We have a right to advertise beer at a city marathon. And every country is going to have ruled differently on that. I could certainly see out like, say, a baseball game, football game, soccer, whatever. People like to watch that stuff and drink beer. I get that, right? And I like to drink beer too when I watch baseball. But I also get the point of view, say, in the marathon situation, if the city's, hey, we're going to shut down streets, we're going to have, city police, city fire, like, city workers and stuff like this, and we're going to do this as a way to promote public health. Yeah, I actually can see that to where let's not have alcoholic branding and sponsorships of these kind of events. And so that's why you would, limit that kind of stuff. They also have capacity limits to like, you want to make sure you don't cause too much harm. And then this was an interesting one as well. This is like regulations that sound good to me. Organizers who fail to clean up litter on roads after races will face penalties. And so then if you are going to do these kind of races, then you make sure you hire enough people to make sure everything's clean and you put clear signage because I don't want to pay the fine that there's litter, and you do things in an orderly manner. And again, this is how you regulate stuff. It's not like we don't have freedom, because the way that Trump and Musk act like if you put regulations in place, like they take away all your freedoms. I mean, do you see how like this is regulations to figure out ways that we can all live together in a cohesive way and like we're not all fighting each other nonstop. And all this stuff contributes over to your overall mental health. And I know, say in USA when you talk about gun violence or whatever, people say it's not the guns, it's the mental health. I mean, you could argue both because we don't really have guns here, so we can't go around shooting people if it's just not a thing. But also mental health matters. Right? Because if you do these things like, say, city marathon to where you close down the city and you promote public health, that really matters. And it's fun and it gives people something to do. It doesn't have to be expensive and these kind of things. Or here's another example. This one is new to me. I know they do these similar kind of things, but I didn't know it's this particular one. It says Seoul's Hanok rentals captivate with traditional harm. So basically what it is, they're promoting people renting these traditional kind of places, and they're modernized with air conditioning, but they have floor heating and such, and they look really cool and peaceful and such. And then they'll promote, like it says here, it says newlyweds, young families, and dreams of living in traditional housing, right? And something they've been trying to do a lot is like really help first-time home buyers and that kind of stuff to, subsidize costs. I mean, if you know anything about the USA right now, just give you the contrast. It's really hard. There's not that much construction of affordable homes or affordable living because remember, everything is profits over people. And so you just focus on building those luxury homes because that generates the most profit. And so this is where an example when if the government can come in and also promote Korean culture and such like that, it doesn't mean it's going to be the nicest place in the world and such, but it's done really differently here. It's just they really work hard to help local people, which I think is what people should do. And people do complain. It's not like there's no complaints here. There was a strike recently. It says the Seoul bus drivers end strike after reaching wage deal, which is totally fine. People have a right to strike. And remember, Musk and Trump, they hate unions. And I'm just, again, showing you a different point of view because they always act like Korea or other countries that aren't USA are not free. But I can tell you, we're pretty free over here. And in fact, having laws and regulations actually helps your life. It doesn't hinder it. It helps you. Because I'm all for people having the right to strike and get a fair deal. So ultimately, they got a 2.9 wage hike. And then this was an interesting one, gradually extend the retirement age to 65, what used to be 63, because they effectively, because, people live longer these days, they would make people retire too soon, essentially. And it's the reason why you'd have people retire. They make room for the young people to come in and have jobs. And there's always really controversial stuff with that, like should you have people retire or not, right? And then that's a whole other discussion. But at least these are the kind of discussions we're having. Or how can we attract more foreign investment into the country? So then they set up these free economic zones, and evidently they're saying that those things have been fairly successful. But that's a controversial one as well, because like, well, do we want too much foreign investment? Then we start to, quote, lose our country, that kind of stuff. So these are kind of our local stuff. This has actually been a big issue also recently. It says 1 in 9 international students in South Korea overstay visas or work without permission. So, because people always ask about this stuff, right? Do you have immigration issues in Korea? Yes, we do. And for people who say that they don't, they're always just MAGA loons. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And it's just people always say crap about other places they've never been, don't speak the language, they don't know. And that's why I'm just telling you guys, yeah, we have similar situations in USA. And it doesn't mean that just because someone on a student visa maybe overstays or maybe do a job they're not supposed to do. Because like, for example, there was one situation. It was. I'll just be frank. It was sad. I think she might have been from Vietnam, and then the thing of her visa is like she could do like office work, but not do physical work, I think is what it was. And then there was some sort of raid on like a factory that she was in. I can't remember what kind of one, but there's a woman who died. Actually, she fell from a window because she was hiding from the immigration authorities. But the whole situation's sad. It didn't mean that authorities shot her or anything. Just sometimes people don't follow the rules. Same way with this kind of thing, and then you got to figure out, okay, how do we handle this stuff? And it is a problem, right? But again, it doesn't mean you just go shoot people, and it doesn't mean you ignore due process. This is how functioning democracy works, and you have a dialogue about it. It is a reality here, though, is that there's not enough young people to populate the universities. So some universities are actually closing down or expanding into having more foreign students. That's been an interesting discussion here because it changes everything. Local Koreans then will, marry international people because it happens. You meet someone, you like them, you get married or whatever, and it's love has no boundaries. You can marry, no borders, I should say. You can marry anyone you like. And this has also been a concern here as well as there's not enough young people, kids, in fact. Grade 1 enrollment falls below 300,000 for the first time as Korea population shrinks. This is also an issue around several countries around the world, and multiple countries are going to face this because there's essentially the baby boomer generation right after World War II, kind of in that era where I think, for example, I think my wife's mom, I want to say she comes from a family of 4 or 5, the kids, that is. And then I think her dad, is the same, maybe 4 or 5, maybe even 6 siblings total or something, just a lot more. And then, people these days maybe have like 1 or 2 kid kind of stuff. So it's going to be a pretty similar situation in, I think, multiple countries to where, what do we do with the elderly population? Like, how do we take care of them? There's not enough taxpayers below them to keep the system going. And it's a major issue. So they've been coming up with all kinds of incentives here in Korea to encourage people, be it, housing, affordable housing for young couples, or incentives to make so the weddings are more affordable, like all kinds of like interesting things that they're up to. And this is, again, what a functioning democracy looks like. You figure out policies, have discussions, how to solve things. It doesn't mean everyone in Korea is a sane person. No, it's not. The Yoon party, it's just like the MAGA people. And they are so whacked out. And it's funny, every time they have a big scandal, they change the name of the party, and they're going to do it again. I think this is like the second or third name change. So basically what it is like, after Trump leaves, everyone's going to hate Republicans, just for example. And then just imagine the Republican Party change their name to, okay, we're the, Republican Freedom Party. Oh, okay, Freedom Party. Or we're the Tea Party, or whatever stupid thing they're going to name to. But that's what they do in Korea. It's such a pathetic party. The Yoon party, and those people, they change their name. They're going to do it again. So anyway, that's my thoughts on this stuff. I just like to share different points of view, and people ask me about what's going on in Korea, and that's what's going on. And I want to hear what's going on, say, in Canada, UK, Australia, et cetera, other places. And is it similar or different than what's happening here in Korea, and sort of how your companies are dealing with USA, and how your countries are facing challenges, and how you address that stuff for your local population. So thank you for your time, everyone, and I'll catch you all in the next video.